एक बार आप बस उस पर चेक कर लीजिए, जो बैच है ना इनका टाइटल, उस पे जा रहा है कि नहीं। यूट्यूब पे तो आ गया। हेलो 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 हेलो, इज इट ऑडिबल? जस्ट अ मोमेंट। जस्ट एक मोमेंट। हेलो। यहाँ पर जो कमेंट्स वगैरह आएंगे वो कहाँ पर आते हैं? कमेंट्स वाला वो आप ऑन कर लीजिए। हेलो हेलो हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। एम आई ऑडिबल? एम आई विजिबल? हाय, जस्ट अ मोमेंट। हाँ, मंजूर भाई, जो टाइटन बैच का जो लाइव होगा ना, कमेंट्स वो मेरे को चाहिए होंगे। हाँ, वो मेरे को चाहिए होंगे, बिकॉज आई डोंट। हाँ, थोड़ा रिस्पॉन्स आए तो मुझे भी दिखे। स्टार्ट चैट। जस्ट अ मोमेंट गाइस, विल स्टार्ट इन अ मिनट। गुड मॉर्निंग अभिषेक, गुड मॉर्निंग निहारिका। ऑल राइट, लॉट्स ऑफ यू, लॉट्स ऑफ यू, गुड मॉर्निंग, हेलो हेलो हेलो। हाँ, मैं इधर ही देख पाऊंगा राइट, ये वाले सारे? हेलो, 10 minutes extra have gone. All right. परफेक्ट परफेक्ट परफेक्ट। यहीं पर होएगा ना कमेंट्स का फ्लो तो? मेरे को माउस मिल सकता है इसके लिए? नहीं? अच्छा, जो चल रहा है वो चल रहा है ऐसे टाइप। ऑल राइट, परफेक्ट। हाँ, ये बस आप ये मेरे सामने रख दीजिएगा, सो आई कैन सी। हाँ, गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन। ऑल राइट, कैन यू जस्ट गिव मी अ हैंड्स अप, लाइक हाउ मेनी पीपल आर हियर? जस्ट सेंड मी अ हाई सो आई कैन सी. Oh, yeah, I'm firstly extremely sorry that we are starting this class 10 minutes late. There is something technical going on out here, so I cannot really explain what has exactly happened. But anyways, so most of you all are joining today, I'm guessing, because this is where you start your batch from. All right, just give me a hands up. Yes sir, yes sir. Shri Ram, Jai Shri Ram ji, सब लोग के लिए. All right, सेट हो चुका है दादा? बस इसको नीचे ले आओ एकदम, जो वाला साइड का चैटर है ना, लेफ्ट हैंड साइड वाला, हाँ एकदम इसको नीचे ले आइए। थैंक यू, परफेक्ट परफेक्ट। ऑलराइट गाइस, so a very good morning to all of you. A little bit about myself. My name is Ranchan Kaul and I'm going to be teaching Indian economy at OnlyIAS UPSC. So this is your first class for Titan 2026. I'm guessing most of you are starting to prepare today and you're all targeting the exam next year. Am I right though? You will have to sort of interact with me a little bit so I get a hang of how this works. Anybody who's preparing for a year which is not 2026, which is 2027? This session is primarily going to be an orientation session. So we're not going to be discussing anything academic starting today. What we're going to be discussing here is briefly something about the examination. What is it that it takes to clear this examination? I need to understand your cohort a fair bit, like what is your composition, how many of you have written this exam previously, what is your understanding of this exam, what is your understanding of how to tackle this exam, how to approach it. So this is mostly going to be on those lines. How many of you, I'm asking you a question, how many of you are preparing for the next year? How many of you are absolutely certain that you want to write it next year and that's what you're targeting? Between me asking a question and between you responding and me getting that response, there will be a lag of somewhere around 20 to 30 seconds. So you'll have to bear with me, right? The question that I've posed to you is how many of you are preparing for next year, where you're absolutely sure that next year you have to write this examination. I'm waiting for your responses. I can't see too many. How many of you all? I think for some reason the chatter has stopped. Can you guys just send me a hi or something so I know that this is not stuck? Anyone? YouTube, I can see things are happening. If you're all on your learning management portal, your LMP or the app, you guys can respond to me so I know that you guys are present and you guys are interacting and responding. I need to know that because it could be a technical issue once again. So we need to resolve that first before we proceed further. Radhikant ji, hum samajh gaye. All right. Any other person who's from Titan 2026? I think it's a little bit stuck. Just a moment. Let me try and yeah. All right. So fine. Fair a little bit about myself. My name is Ranchan Kaul. I'll be taking Indian economy for PW OnlyIAS UPSC. We are starting with this batch, Titan, for the year 2026. Now, how many of you actually are preparing for civil services for the next year? And how many of you are very, very serious about this exam? In the meantime, if you can see, you guys can join my Telegram group. This is where I'll be connecting with my students. This is where I'll be sharing some handouts. If there are some good readings that you want to definitely be looking at, provided that you're serious about this examination, I'll be sharing it on my Telegram channel. If you guys can scan this barcode, you can join the same. All right. Now, a fair bit about what this exam entails. How many of you know some person who has cleared this examination previously? Or how many of you think that you have a decent idea about how this exam works? Now, I know about this particular exam, more specifically civil services, because it's one of the most sought after positions in the Indian government. Clearly, there is a lot of people who want to prepare for civil services. Right? Many of us, unfortunately, do not know other people. Many of us do not know other. Just a moment. Yeah. Many of us don't know like a lot of people who are prepared for this. So there are some misunderstandings there. There is a lot of disinformation about this particular exam. There's a lot of misinformation about this particular exam. So we need to be starting right? We need to be starting exactly from the point where we discuss what this exam basically entails. What is it that it takes for you to clear this examination per se? Now, a brief bit about UPSC Civil Services examination. Just a moment. All right. So you're going to be preparing for UPSC Civil Services Examination. This exam typically has 3 particular stages. Each one of these stages is a different beast onto itself. There is this stage which is called your prelims examination, followed by this stage which is called your main examination, followed by the third step which is called personality test. And what I've discovered in my years of experience working in this industry is that many of us aspirants, we are introduced to this exam because some person in our family cleared it, because some or the other teacher, and now on YouTube and various other social media channels, we find that there are many people who appear for interviews. So many of us have seen those mock interviews. So we look at the kind of questions which are posed to the candidates, and some of them become successful. Unfortunately, many of them don't. So our introduction to this examination is typically through a family member, typically through a friend who cleared, typically through a friend of our relatives or a friend of friends who have cleared this examination. And generally also because this exam is super aspirational in the Indian economy per se, you will find there are many aspirants who want to get into the higher echelons of power when it comes to the Indian government. Quite obviously, civil services examination, I will not say this is one of the toughest in terms of the subject matter. This definitely is the toughest given the kind of competition that you will be facing going forward. Titan 2.0 is going to be a batch wherein we are going to be discussing all the syllabus. We are going to be discussing many things as to how to clear prelims examination, how to clear mains examination. There'll be a lot of practice, but all of this is going to happen in the English medium per se, right? So civil services examination, like I said, firstly, you have to understand that this is a competitive exam. When you look at the eligibility for civil services examination, the eligibility is such that the only thing which is required is that you have to be 21 years of age, and in terms of your educational qualification, you only have to be a graduate if you want to appear for this examination. Now, since the eligibility criteria for this examination has been kept so low, plus this exam is going to select you for services and for posts which are the most, I would say, the most functionally important positions in the government, quite obviously you will find many people aspire to become civil servants. And the numbers which we have seen that this exam has been clocking since the last 2 to 3 odd years, the numbers are roughly in the ballpark of 10 to 12 lakh. Now, it is a competitive examination. 10 to 12 lakh candidates are going to fill their forms. In a competitive examination, you don't work according to absolutes. It's not like you have to score a certain percentage of marks for you to get selected. In a competitive examination, what you have to do is you have to beat the rest of the competition. So you need to understand who are the other aspirants preparing for this examination. You need to also understand what are they doing. You need to understand what sources they refer to, how do they practice their questions, what scores are they getting in these tests, and you have to be one step ahead of them. That's how competitive examinations work. So when you look at this exam and you look at the number of applicants, 10 to 12 lakh candidates are the applicants for this examination. That means these people are going to be filling up the application form to appear for this examination. Are all of these people your competition? I would strongly say no. Out of 10 to 12 lakh applicants, it's roughly only 50% of these applicants who will end up actually appearing for this exam. That means 10 to 12 lakh candidates fill up the form. Only about 5 to 6 lakh candidates end up taking this exam. And is this 5 to 6 lakh students ka cohort, is this your competition? I would once again suggest no. Amongst these 5 to 6 lakh candidates who are going to be appearing for this examination, I would be very generous if I say around 1 lakh candidates are candidates who know what to do. There are only at best 1 lakh candidates who understand what is the requirement for each of these steps, what does it take to clear each of these steps, and then are also willing to work hard in that direction, work very hard in that direction, and then it's only a matter of time that they are going to clear this examination. So in terms of absolute numbers, roughly 10 to 12 lakh applicants, 5 to 6 lakh people who will appear for the first stage, and from the first stage, this filtration process will begin. Normally, you will find in any year, कुछ लोग बोल रहे हैं सर इंग्लिश में पढ़ाओ. Guys, I'm so sorry, this is the English channel and the batch is also in English. So we have a diverse set of students, some of them from the northeast, some of them from the south, some of them from the west. So for them, I have to take these classes in English. So pardon me for that. This is the language, this is the medium that we are going to be taking. There will be other batches in English too, or maybe I'll take up this session in English also. For now, just bear with me. It's only going to be in English. Now, like I said, for each of these stages, the filtration process will begin. From 5 to 6 lakh aspirants, roughly around, not 10, I think 10 would be a little bit on the lower side, somewhere around 13 to 15,000 candidates will get selected, depending upon the number of posts after the prelims examination. From 13 to 15,000 candidates who have cleared prelims and who are going to be writing mains, roughly around 3,000 candidates will be selected for the last stage, which is called the personality test. And out of these 3,000 candidates, the ratio is roughly around 3:1. Out of these 3,000 candidates, you will find that at the end of the tunnel, only 1,000 candidates are going to reach. So this exam is a year and a half long filtration process. The moment you enter into this exam, from the moment you will see your name in the final PDF, it's going to take you roughly 12 to 15 odd months. You have to be here. You have to be in the most coveted PDF in this particular country. For you to reach here, you will have to breach the 3 stages. One, the prelims examination, followed by the mains examination, and followed by the personality test. Now, like I said, each of these 3 stages are very, very different stages because they take very, very different skill sets. They take very, very different metrics where they are going to evaluate you and filter you in or filter you out. Each of these 3 stages is very different. I'm going to explain to you how. Now, for most candidates, when they compare this prelims examination versus the main examination, there are some metrics that you will have to compare this examination on. First metric is with respect to the syllabus. The other metric is with respect to the pattern of questions. The third metric is whether the marks will be counted towards the final results or not. Now, most of us know, if we are appearing for this examination, most of us know that prelims is an objective type test, while mains is a subjective examination. This almost everyone knows, whoever is preparing for this examination. Now, prelims being an objective type test, mains is a subjective test, everybody knows. Followed by marks. Are the marks for prelims counted towards your final result? No. Prelims is only and only a filtration stage. What it means is, if you clear prelims, only those candidates who clear prelims will get to write the main examination. The marks that you score in prelims examination, they do not get accounted for, which means that if the cutoff is 75 and if you scored 75.1, it does not matter, you are through. You are going to write the mains examination, whatever you score in the mains examination, plus if you clear the mains examination, whatever you get in the personality test, in the interviews, those 2 marks will be added up and that is going to count towards your final list. Whether you make it to the list or not, that's for time to tell. Now, like I said, 2 differences are absolutely clear. One, that prelims is an objective type test and mains is a subjective examination. Second, prelims, the marks for prelims will not be accounted for, while the marks for mains are going to be accounted for. Now, most of the candidates who appear for this examination, unfortunately, have not had a background in this examination or unfortunately have not attempted many competitive exams previously. So their mindset and their approach towards these papers remains broadly the same what they followed while they were in school or what they followed while they were in college. This exam is fundamentally different from your school examinations, from your college examinations. We will understand how. Now, in terms of syllabus between prelims and mains, when you look at the syllabus for prelims, the syllabus for prelims is rather unclear. There are only 7 to 8 lines which they have mentioned: events of national and international importance, inclusive growth, mobilization, history of India, right? Important geophysical phenomenon, geography, physical, human, including one that of India. When you look at the syllabus for prelims, 6 to 7 lines, there is not a lot of clarity as to what they ask in prelims examination. But when you look at your mains examination for each of these subjects, which is General Studies 1, 2, 3 and 4, in addition for your optional subjects, the syllabus is absolutely and crystal clear. In fact, so much so that if you pick up any year's question paper, previous year's question paper for mains, you will find that there is a one-to-one linking between the topics which have been mentioned in the syllabus and the question which has been asked. That is not the case with prelims examination. So how do you prepare for prelims? Because you have to clear it before you get to write the mains examination. For an exam where the syllabus is not very clear, it does not clearly specify what they are going to ask you, how do you prepare for an exam like that? We all know it's an objective type test. We all know its marks are not going to be counted for. But the biggest problem comes from the fact that the syllabus is rather unclear. Now, how do we prepare for this? Up until now, the approach which has been followed by people who select or who get selected in prelims on a consistent basis is that you don't have to worry about the syllabus so much. The syllabus for prelims is a subset of the syllabus for the mains examination. That means in the mains examination, General Studies 1, 2, 3 and 4 already will cover many of the topics which are there in the prelims examination. So from a coverage point of view, if you are preparing for mains, you almost automatically prepare for prelims also. Only thing being, you will have to understand what is the scope or what is the level of depth that you have to go to, because most of these subjects are going to be subjects where people are doing their masters, some of them are doing their PhDs in these subjects itself. Now, if there is a subject, something like an economics, something like, let's say, geography, something like history, where people are doing their bachelors, their masters, their doctorates also in these subjects, what is the level of depth that you have to go to, provided that you're going to be writing this exam in 1 year time frame? That means there is a lot of time management which is going to happen when it comes to the prelims examination. So how do we approach the prelims examination? Firstly, we don't worry about the coverage. Coverage, you don't have to worry about so much, because if you're preparing for mains, you automatically are also covering the topics which are going to be asked in prelims. The only thing you have to be very worried about is the depth of understanding. How deep do you have to go for each topic, for each subject? That is where a lot of time management principles are going to come in, because we all are working with a window of roughly around 1 year. In 1 year's time, you have to cover 4 general studies papers. Then you have to also prepare for essay writing, and most importantly, you also have to prepare for the optional subject. So given the amount of time, which is obviously very limited, in this limited time frame, how do I maximize my outcomes? That is where the entire game lies. In terms of coverage, don't worry about it. In terms of level of depth that you have to go to, your only reference points can be previous year's question papers. And mind you, this is probably the most important aspect of appearing for this examination, be it your prelim stage, be it your mains stage, and even for personality test. You should first get used to what are the kind of questions, what is the level of depth of these questions. Are they just very simple? Are they very difficult? You will have to get a hang of it. The only reference point for you is prelims previous year's question papers, mains previous year's question papers, and of course, because you will be joining this batch, you will of course be in touch with your faculty, with your teachers. You can always get in touch with them and get to understand how much deep do you have to go for every topic. Once you understand the level of depth, then the game becomes one that of acing this objective examination versus a subjective examination. Mind you, many of you who have not had a previous experience with a competitive examination or a previous successful experience with a competitive examination, you are prone to be misdiagnosing the reasons for your failure. Many people, when they do not succeed in the prelim stage or in any objective type examination, they misdiagnose what their problem is. Most of the times you will think, oh, I did not study enough or I did not prepare enough. While that could be a possible reason, the biggest reason which most people choose to avoid discussing or avoid analyzing is whether I prepared in the right direction or not. Did I have a strategy as to how do I clear this examination or not? I'll give you a case in point. Now, how is an objective examination different from a subjective examination? The difference is very simple. In an objective examination, you will be given a question. The question will have statements 1, statement 2, statement 3, statement 4 written on it. And then the question will be which of these statements are correct or which of these statements are incorrect. This is the most common type of question that they ask you in prelims examination. Now, you will be given a question with a few statements, asked whether some of these statements are incorrect, all of them are incorrect, how many of them are correct, and sometimes you may even be required to tell them which ones are correct and which ones are not. This question will be followed by 4 options. Option A, option B, option C, and option D. This is the most common format of a question in the prelims examination. In the mains examination, you will be given a booklet. In each booklet, you will have a question followed by some space for you to write your answers. Now, this and this are entirely different, even if they may be asking a question on the same topic. The reason why they are different is that in the prelims examination, the answer lies amongst each of these 4. It could be option A, it could be option B, C, or D. It's not like you have to make or draw your own box and you have to answer what the question is asking you. The answer is one amongst these 4. That means even if you went unprepared for this examination, since one of these 4 can be the answer, that means everybody, regardless of whether they have prepared for this exam or not, everybody stands a 1/4 chance or a 25% chance of getting this question right, regardless of whether they know the topic or not, because the answer is one of these 4. So everybody has a 1/4 chance that they may get this question right. But in the mains examination, there is no such scope. In the mains examination, they have given you a question. You have to first understand the question. You have to understand what he is exactly asking you and very quickly formulate an approach in your head and address the question as per its requirements. Write an entire answer down. Whatever you write in this blank space, you will be evaluated basis whatever you have put on the paper here, not on the basis of whatever lies in your head. So you have to be very good at articulation. Now, one exam where you are starting with a 25% possibility of getting the question right, compared with another exam where there is no such game of probabilities. Therefore, the approach to an objective examination, which is the prelims, as well as the main examination, which is a subjective examination, will be entirely different regardless of whether the topics or the syllabus is the same or not. That is the first thing you have to keep in mind, that the exam is going to be asking me questions from the same topics or similar topics. One is where I have a 25% chance of getting it right without even preparing. The other I have to be absolutely sure of before I write any word on the answer script. Because the script that they're going to give you, the real estate they're going to give you is going to be very limited. You're not going to be asking for extra sheets. That does not happen in the civil services examination. Now, coming back to this preliminary stage, we know that 4 of these options, each of them for any person who is not prepared, each of them is equally likely to be an answer and hence a 25% possibility of getting this question right. From this 25% possibility, you have to go to a 100% possibility of getting the question right. which means that you should look at a question and be able to filter out which of these options is correct. And this stage where you increase your possibility of getting a question right from 25% to 100%, this entire time is going to be decided by how well you are prepared for it. This is the preparation. The preparation is to make sure that the possibilities of getting a question right in prelims examination, you increase it to 100% for as many questions as you possibly can. That is how you're going to be acing the prelims examination on a consistent basis. Now, this preparation cannot be done in the absence of any strategy. That means this preparation has to be given a direction. This preparation has to be given a strategy. Now, since each of us come from a different background, we may have our own understanding of the examination, we may have our own direction, our own strategy, but do not start this preparation without any strategy. You can have a bad strategy which can be improved. You can have a great strategy which cannot be improved, or you can say a great strategy which does not need to be improved. But if you appear for this examination in the absence of a strategy, that is where you're going to be making the gravest mistake ever. So you should know what is the correct strategy about going for a prelims examination. I can discuss with you in a brief bit, like what could be the possible strategy, how do we become better at objective examinations. Like I said, when you look at this particular exam, 4 options, each of them 25% possibility of getting the question right. That means from 25%, what will be a story of coming down to 100%? This has to be done on a step-by-step basis. What are the various steps? In your prelims examination, the first step should be understanding the exam. Second, understanding your competitors. This is where you begin. Understand what the exam is and understand who your competition is, what do they do. In terms of the exam, we have given a brief rounder on prelims is going to be an objective exam. The syllabus is going to be unclear. So your reference point will be your previous year's question papers. Given the topics, every time you complete a certain topic, go back to the previous year's question papers and try to see if you can attempt those questions or not. Now, once you have a reasonable understanding of what your framework is going to be, the most important stage is going to be about this part, which is understanding who your competition is. What do they do? In any prelims examination, the third stage will be one that of calibration. When I say calibration, it means what is going to be your approach? How do you solve a certain particular exam? Like how do you go about this particular prelims exam? Do you go from question 1 to 2 to 3 to 4? Or do you start with a certain section? Do you avoid a certain sections first? Like what could be your particular strategy around this? Like I said, let's go for each of these one by one. Now, just a moment. Understanding your competition, very, very important. Like what is it that your competition studies? What do they study in terms of sources? And how do they revise? If you pick any year's question paper for that matter, you will find that there is a certain composition of these questions. In a prelims examination, there will be 100 questions. Out of these 100 questions, the broad composition would be that in terms of history, I'm talking about modern, ancient, medieval, and as well as the art and culture section, you will have roughly around 20 questions. In terms of polity, you will have the same 16 to 20 questions. In terms of economics, you will have roughly around 16 questions, followed by geography and environment and biodiversity. This is going to be around 30 questions, so 30 and 70, 86. The remaining questions will be science and tech questions, questions related to international events. The remaining will be here. Now, this is the broad composition of any prelims question paper. Amongst these broad compositions, there will be questions which are going to be coming from what I call standard sources. then there will be questions which are going to be coming from not your standard sources. So not the standard sources could involve what I call miscellaneous reading. I'm talking about each of these subjects, be it history, be it polity, be it economics, be it your geography, environment and biodiversity. There are some aspects of each of these topics or each of these subjects which are going to be covered as a foundation. There will be some questions which you may get from current affairs, and then there will be some questions which you don't know where they came from, and those questions are the questions which puzzle most of the candidates. Now, you know that for each subject there will be some standard sources or some essential reading, and some questions are going to be coming from the miscellaneous parts. Depending upon how many questions come from there and how many questions come from there, the level of difficulty of the examination also gets decided. For example, an easy question paper will be where you find around 60% of the questions are coming from standard sources, while 40% questions are coming from miscellaneous reading. If you flip this ratio, if only 40% questions come from standard sources and 60% questions come from miscellaneous reading, that is where the examination starts to become a little difficult. The moment this examination becomes difficult, you will start to see that the cutoffs start to dip down, they start to get reduced. So for you, you need to have a fair understanding of whether this question paper is right or is this question paper an easy question paper, a moderate question paper or a difficult question paper. You will not be able to tell unless you have attempted previous year's question papers. If you have seen previous year's question papers and also looked at their respective cutoffs, you will know the years in which the cutoff was more than 105. Those years the question paper was largely on the expected lines. Those question papers were rather, you can say, on the easier side of things. Why? Because many questions came from standard sources, very few questions came from other miscellaneous sources of reading. The moment you look at 2018-19 onwards, you'll start to see many questions start to come from miscellaneous aspects. Very few questions are going to be coming from your standard sources, which is why the cutoffs consistently started dropping down. Right now, the cutoffs are sub 90 even for that matter. So you have to be prepared for this unpredictability. That means for each of these subjects, history, polity, economy, geography, science and tech, environment and biodiversity, you have to have some standard sources. Many people, where they make their first mistake is that these people are going to be definitely looking for many sources. Since the questions are going to be coming from a wide spectrum of areas, your first problem will be, where do I pick my sources from? And that is your first mistake. Remember, this exam is going to take a lot of your time. This exam has many topics in the syllabus. That means for each topic, if you refer to more than one source, you are going to be ending up with somewhere around 300-400 different sources. There will be hardly any time for you to first read these sources, let alone revising it later on. It is just not going to be possible. Therefore, you have to first understand that this exam is hardly a source-based exam. This exam is going to check whether you understand what you read or not, and basis that understanding, can you eliminate options or not? That is where your skill lies. For example, let me take an example of Indian economy per se. In Indian economy, what is my standard sources and what is my miscellaneous reading? Now, in the Indian economy, if you want to get most of those 16 questions right, first is where you need to understand what kind of questions do they ask me. In Indian economy, there will be questions which I like to call basic questions or applied questions. Then there will be questions based on information, where there is not a lot of scope for you to apply what you have learned, where the question is on the lines of testing your knowledge. So if you know some statements, great. If you don't, you don't. These are the two broad kind of questions that they are going to ask you. Now, standard and applied questions are mostly going to come from the economics aspect of it, and that too majorly from macroeconomics. That means in the last, let's say, 2013 till about 2024, which is about 12 years of this examination, Right? In the last 12 years of this examination, in fact, not 12, it's actually 13 years of examination. In the last 13 question papers, roughly 1300 questions have been asked. Out of them, 16 per paper. You can imagine that closer to about 180 questions have been asked so far in the last 13 years from economics. In the last 180 questions, only 2 questions were asked from micro. Only and only 2. At best could be 3. The remaining questions, which are basic and applied questions, came from macroeconomics. So that gives you a hint that if I have to prepare for the basic language of this subject, I have to stress not so much on micro, I have to stress more on macroeconomics. For macroeconomics, your standard source is going to be nothing better than NCERT class 12th, Fundamentals of Macroeconomics. It's a really tiny book, has around 6 to 7 odd chapters. If you can possibly find the previous edition of this book, nothing better than that. This is the best source for macroeconomics if you have to become a little bit better at attempting macroeconomics questions. Do you want to be investing time in microeconomics? I guess since you have already enrolled for the Titan batch, I am going to be taking roughly 2 to 3 classes on microeconomics, where I am going to be discussing all the relevant and important concepts that you need to know before you understand the Indian economy. So you don't have to waste your time on any other source. So first essential reading material, your standard source is your NCERT class 12th macro. Now the syllabus for this exam is not economics. The syllabus for this exam is in fact Indian economy. That means this exam is mostly going to be testing you on the information and understanding of how the Indian economy functions, not on basic conceptual understanding of economics per se. In the economics prelim section, 50% questions you can expect to be coming from applied parts, which is where you need to be good at macroeconomics. 50% or sometimes even 60% questions are going to be information based questions around the Indian economy. So how do I prepare for them? In addition to your standard source, which is your NCERT class 12 Fundamentals of Macroeconomics, the next thing you should be referring to is your class notes. In the class notes, we are going to be touching upon economics to begin with, and then we'll follow it up with the Indian economy parts of the syllabus. So your class notes become your essential reading material. Class 12th NCERT macro becomes your essential reading material. In addition, one of the most common sources from which UPSC asks you questions is the economic survey, which happens to be released one day before the budget every year, plus the budget document. Now, normally the economic survey is a huge book. The budget is also a huge document. So you will find there will be classes or there will be sources which will summarize the important aspects from the economic survey as well as from the budget document. This is also something that you just cannot skip. In addition, the most important part for a subject like the Indian economy is going to be current affairs. Now, these are your standard sources: class 12th NCERT macro, your class notes, economic survey, your budget document, plus around 12 to 15 months of current affairs. That means if you're going to be writing, let's say, prelims in the May of next year, you should at least start from March. If not March, then at least from May of this year onwards. You have to follow one newspaper for sure, right? Many of us are always confused whether we can be consuming current affairs from the magazines itself. If you ask me, my standard trope is that you should not rely solely on magazines. You should focus more on reading newspapers also. The reason is very simple. One, because newspapers are going to be discussing topics on an incremental basis. That means every day you're going to be reading about same or similar topics. The more you read about the same topic, the more you retain in your head also. While a magazine is going to be giving you a summary of all those topics towards the end. So the more you repeat, the higher you retain. There is only one key to retention, which is repetition. In a newspaper, since you read same or similar topics on a daily basis, that means many times you would have come across that particular term, that particular issue. That means there is a higher chance that you will remember this for longer compared to a magazine which comes at the end of the month itself. Now, because there is a magazine also, that means you can save some more time. You can read your newspapers, you can filter out what to read and what not to read. You cannot make notes. If you find yourself being short on time, don't make notes from the newspapers. Probably leave that notes part to your magazine itself. That means somebody else is doing that hard work for you. Somebody else is reading many topics, many sources. They are condensing all that information in a more palatable format, and it is making that ready for you. So you can avoid making notes. That way you save some time also. And when you read your magazine, there is also an additional benefit. The additional benefit is, given the amount of time that you have, because you're going to be writing next year, you cannot be picking up 2, 3 or 4 newspapers a day. That's not the amount of time that you have. You can follow one standard newspaper, and then if you're worried about news being covered in other particular newspapers too, since you don't have the time for it, allow the magazine team to read those sources and compile notes for you. So that way you are not worried about comprehensive coverage, because the team is going to be reading many sources of news, and they're going to be condensing, they're going to be filtering out what is important for your examination. They're going to be making some very simple notes for you to read from. Second, you also are in a habit of reading, and because you're going to be coming across multiple topics on a daily basis, that means there is a higher chance for you to retain that information also. In addition, there is also one more benefit of reading a newspaper daily, which is that if you read a newspaper daily, you will find many subject matter experts, somebody like a Raghuram Rajan, somebody like Mr. Pushpesh Pant, somebody like a higher person or a higher authority, let's say from the Indian government, let's say from, you can say, world academia. Those people are going to be writing their opinions on certain pressing topics. And these are going to be very complicated topics. You can also learn from them as to how do they structure their thought. If there is an issue, let's say on inflation targeting, when a Raghuram Rajan writes about inflation targeting, it's going to be, because the person has so much information on that particular topic, how does Raghuram Rajan condense his information and present it in a format which readers will enjoy reading? So there is a lot of learning in terms of writing practice also, as to how many people who are experts in their particular domains, how do they write about certain topics. Lots of learning from newspapers, which is why I typically tell all my candidates, all my students, to always refer to a newspaper. I mean, you may not be able to follow every newspaper, but one you should definitely pick. Now, since Niharika is asking which newspaper is good, there are 2 newspapers that you can follow: the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, for many candidates who are not very versatile, who are not very articulate, some candidates who find, it's hard to grasp the language of a newspaper, for them, reading the Hindu might be a bit of a problem. But like I say, if you continue to read the Hindu, eventually it becomes much more easier, and eventually you also learn the tricks of the language too. But if you find the Hindu is a little bit too much for you to read, you can always refer to the Indian Express. Pick one of these 2. If you ask my preference, I will definitely go for Hindu, a little more serious newspaper. Plus, it has conventionally been one of the major sources from which UPSC asks questions. So I would go, in terms of priority, I would go for the Hindu. You may pick the Indian Express depending upon which newspaper you like to read better. The idea is not which newspaper to read. The idea is to read it more consistently, develop that habit. Now, this is your standard source. That means if you are writing the exam next year, none of these sources can you really avoid. If there is any question which comes from these sources, not from these sources, but from these sources, which is, say, questions which are going to be coming from miscellaneous sources. Now, these questions are going to be as hard for you as they are going to be for any serious aspirant. A serious aspirant is one who has read this many times, who has revised this many times, and also tested himself or herself in various test series. There will be questions which may come from any aspect, any topic under the sun. Those are what we call miscellaneous questions. So if there is a chance for you to sort of use your understanding and eliminate a few options, great. Otherwise, these questions are as difficult for the best candidates as they are for you. So you don't have to worry about them. What you have to worry about is, if there are questions which come from the standard sources, my most serious competition is not going to get them wrong. So if they are not going to get them wrong, I can also not afford to get them wrong, right? So you have to be right up there with the best in this competition. For these questions, I will tell you there are many tricks that we can follow eventually in the classes also. How do you maximize your scores here? So for Indian economy, these are your standard sources that you just cannot avoid. Apart from this, there can be miscellaneous readings, which I will also be sharing in my Telegram channel every now and then. You can refer to that. And if you want, if you have the time for it, you can read those sources also. But worry not about this. Some person who's very new to this examination, what they're going to do is, they're going to misdiagnose that problem and they're going to be focusing so much on reading everything without a focus on revising. Now, mind you, if you have many sources in the first go itself, it is going to take you as much time to cover up all those topics and forget about revising it later. Which is why the trick is to limit your sources. In fact, these are already too many. Limit the sources to only these, read them multiple times, make your own notes, then make your short notes, and along the side, you have to also appear for test series. You also have to appear for, you can say, previous year's question papers. At least look at them. That way you prepare yourself. Forget about this part because best competition will also not know this. Much like I can tell you about Indian economy, there are people who can tell you about history, how do you read polity, how do you read science and tech, which sources to refer to and which to skip, right? For each subject, for each topic, please ask your teacher concerned, right? What is the broader framework? What are the sources that I should definitely be referring to? And what are the sources that I should be avoiding listening to or I should be avoiding reading? Because remember, the time is very, very limited. So restrict your sources to a few, make your notes, make your short notes and test yourself along the way. That is the standard practice. Any person who has gotten selected has done exactly these 4 steps and done them very, very consistently. Now, once you know that for every subject there are standard sources, prepare these standard sources. Don't worry about the miscellaneous aspect. Then comes the question of appearing for this examination on the D-Day. How do we score the most marks so that we clear this particular exam? Now, I will tell you a trick. Like I said, there are 100 questions in the prelims exam, right? 100 questions, and these questions will be segregated on the basis of certain topics. Now, with each question, there is a 1/4% chance, or you will say a 25% possibility of you getting the question right, regardless of whether you know that particular topic or not. So, how do I approach a question paper like this? If you have done enough practice from previous year's question papers, and if you have taken a decent number of tests across test series, you would realize that if the question paper is on the easier side, if the question paper is on the moderate side, and if the question paper is on the difficult side, there will be different number of questions that you will know right at the outset. For example, if it's on the easy to moderate side, then a good competition, a very, very serious candidate who has a very high chance of getting selected would know in an easy test paper, roughly around 50 questions, they would know answers to. That means 50 questions where they are sure that they're going to get it right 100%. They know the answer. In a moderate paper, this number could go 40 to 45. And in a difficult question paper, this number, where you from the outset know what is the answer to the question, can lie in the ballpark of 25 to 30. Now, once you have this information, that means once you browse through the question paper and you see that there are 40 questions that I'm able to know answer to right away, that means it most likely is a moderate type of an exam, given that your preparation is also very standard. If you're not prepared very hard and yet you know answers to 40 to 45 questions, that means it's on the easier side. Now, once you know, or once you are able to tell that this is a difficult paper, this is an easy paper, or this is a moderate paper, you try in your head to remember which year's question paper does this look the most common to or most similar to. For example, if it looks the most similar to the 2023 question paper, that means it's on the difficult side, and in 2023 the cutoff was, let's say, 85, right? This year's question paper looks very similar to 2023 in terms of level of difficulty. In 2023, the cutoff was 85. So you will reasonably assume that this year's cutoff will be around 85, but you will not say less than 85. You will tell yourself that the cutoff could be 85 plus 5. This is the cutoff that you're imagining, given that you think that this year's question paper looks very similar to the 2023 question paper. Now, this is your expected cutoff. That means you have to definitely score 90, but to keep yourself safe, you just add 10 more marks to it. That means 100 is your target score. If the question paper looks very similar to 2023, your safe score, your safe target is 100. That means if you score 100, you're automatically going to get there, right? So imagine that you know 30 questions and you think that all of these questions you're going to get right. That means if you get all of them right, you are going to be scoring 60 marks because there are 100 questions. Each question carries 2 marks. For every wrong answer, you are going to be given a penalty of 1/3. But mind you, if you attempt 30 questions and you think you know answers to all 30 questions, in the exam, you're definitely going to get some of them wrong. Why? Because silly mistakes. Sometimes you have 100 questions, 90 out of those 100 questions will be out which of these statements are correct. 10 questions scattered here and there will be which of these statements are not correct. Many students, many aspirants, when they're appearing for this examination, because the pressure is so high, they don't read the question very carefully. If the question asked you which of these assumptions was true, they are going to be going with that flow, not reading because he has asked you which of these statements are not true. This is one of the most common mistakes. The other common mistake is sometimes a question can be very, very, very easy. For example, the question would be, according to the law of the demand, which of these options are correct? If the first option is prices are inversely related to quantity demanded, second opportunity cost increases, something like that, you know what the answer is because it's a very, very standard question. But many people, when they look at this standard question, they may start to think, oh, because it was asked by UPSC, it cannot be as simple. There is definitely a trick lying there. So they start to doubt themselves and they mark a different answer than what they would have gone for. That means for the questions, even if you think you are very, very sure that you're going to get those questions right, you should imagine that some of these questions will still be wrong. That means out of these 30 questions, tell yourself you're going to get 25 right and you're going to get 5 wrong. 25 right and 5 wrong means 25 right means you're going to be scoring a plus 50 here, and 5 wrong means that you're going to be getting a negative 1/3 of 10. Not the number of questions, but the correct marks. Since you attempted 5 questions, that means you attempted for 10 marks. And since you got all of them wrong, that means the penalty will be negative 1/3 of those 10 marks that you attempted. That means your score here will be minus 3.3 plus 50. You have scored 47 in the first go. So first will be the number of questions where you are almost sure that this is the answer. If you count them down and if you find that 30 of these questions are the questions that you were absolutely sure of, right, then you're very, very close to, you could be anywhere between 47 to 60. Now you have to go very close to 100. That means you have to add 40 more marks to your score. How do you go about that? Can you increase your score from a 47 to 60 to about 100 without attempting? No. That means you will have to attempt more questions. This is your first phase of preparing. The second phase would be where you appear for questions where you can eliminate 2 options. For example, there is option A, B, C and D. There were 4 statements, statement 1, 2, 3 and 4. And the question was which of these statements is, let's say, correct. Identify the correct statements from these 4 options. You know for a fact that statement 4 is not correct. Right? You may not know everything about the remaining 3 statements, but one statement you are sure that statement 4 is not correct. That means if option A was 1, 3 and 4, option B was 2 and 4, option C was all of the above and option D was, let's say, 3 only. That means if statement 4 is not correct, you can eliminate option A because the question was which of these statements are correct. That means whichever option has statement 4 in it will definitely be the wrong answer. So you eliminate option A, you eliminate option B, you eliminate option C, you're automatically down to option D, which is your correct answer without you even knowing what the remaining statements are. So this is the skill of elimination. You may not know all statements, but you know some. And if you know some of those statements, you can still eliminate options. The second phase of the prelims examination would be where you find questions where you can eliminate at least 2 options. Imagine that you have between option A, B, C and D, you have eliminated two, which is D and which is B. That means you're not sure whether the option is A, the correct option is A or C. But you want to attempt these questions. Why? Because your best score right now is 60 because you have only attempted 30 questions. If all of them are right, you will be scoring 60. However, you imagine the cutoff to be 100. So from 60 to 100 is a story of attempting these kinds of questions also. That means attempt these questions where you have a 50% chance of getting this question right. Now, because you know that B and D are not right, that means the answer has to be one of these two, A and C. That means you have a 50% chance of getting this question right, which is better than 25%. Should you be attempting these questions? Absolutely. If you find, let's say, 40 of these questions where you have a 1/2 chance of getting the question right, that means amongst these 40 questions, if you have the best day ever, if you are feeling lucky, if for some reason the day feels very good and the stars are shining bright on you, your luck is probably on point, that day you will get 20 questions right and 20 questions wrong from a set of these questions where you could eliminate two options. Now 20 right is going to fetch you a 40 plus positive and 20 wrong is going to fetch you a negative 1/3 of 40, which is minus 13 point something. That means your total score from these kinds of questions where you could eliminate two options is 40 minus 13, which is a positive 27. That means you have added 27 more to your score. The best score would have been 60. You can imagine the score would be somewhere between 47 to 60. So even if you add 27 to 47, you have increased your score to 74. That means you are very, very close to your target of 90 and your safe score of 100. Now from 74, you have to come to 90. You will not be able to come to 90 unless you attempt more questions. This is phase 2 where you can eliminate two options. Depending upon how far you are from what you consider your safe score, in this case 26 marks, that means there is still some scope for you to be attempting many questions. From the remaining 30 questions, imagine that 20 questions are such where you can eliminate one option. If you can eliminate only one option, for example, between A, B, C and D, I could eliminate B. That means the answer lies between A, C and D. You will have to take a leap of faith and select one of these three. Why? Because now you have a 1/3 chance of getting the question right, provided you knew that B is not the right option. 1/3 chance is better than 1/4. It's a 33% chance of getting the question right. 1/4 is a 25% chance of getting the question right. If you find 20 of these questions, imagine that the worst could be that you got 9 questions right and 21 questions wrong. 9 questions right is a positive 18. 21 questions wrong is minus 1/3 of 42, which is minus 14. That means you are still adding a +4 to your score. This is the principle that everyone amongst you should know from the very beginning itself. What I mean to say is, in an objective type examination, the most important skill for you to clear that examination is the skill of elimination. If you are very good with elimination, you have roughly around 90% chance of making it to the mains examination. You don't have to worry too much. That means, are you able to calibrate your attempts? How many questions do you know in phase 1? How many questions do you know in phase 2? How many questions do you know in phase 3? Phase 1 is where you are at 100% possibility of getting the question right. That means you know these questions. Phase 2 is where you are at a 50% chance. That means you are able to eliminate two options. And phase 3 is where you have a 33% chance because you are able to eliminate one option. Depending upon how well you are prepared, and this is something you'll also discover as you take more and more tests. The better you prepare, you will have a standard number of these questions. The more number of questions will be from phase 2, less from phase 3. If you are prepared lesser, that means you will find more of them in phase 3 and less in phase 2. You have to prepare adequately, so you know for each type of question paper, you have roughly between 25 to 40 questions that you know answers to. And for the remaining, you have to have a strategy. That means next time I'm going to attempt questions where I can eliminate 2 options, followed by those questions where I can eliminate only 1 option. But you will have to attempt more to score more. This is something that I have been telling my students forever now. It is also something that I like to call this is thankless information, because many people in the beginning don't really understand the importance of it, don't really understand the strategy around it, right? If you ask me, this is how you're going to be approaching your prelims examination. You always have to have a strategy. You do not go into the prelims examination much like you would do in school, where you would prepare a few test books, and at the end of the textbooks you had a few questions, you learned the answers to those questions, and you are expecting you are going to be asked the same question again. That is not going to happen in prelims examination, specifically in civil services. So you have to be prepared for very, very tough questions sometimes. You have to be prepared for tricky questions sometimes. This is only and only going to come to you from practice and nothing else. Whatever anybody tells you, the only way you will get better at this is through consistent, persistent practice. It is not a game of intelligence. So if you ask me, per day, how many classes? Tulika, I'm imagining per day you will have 2 classes. Classes will start tomorrow itself. I will be taking it from 11 a.m. I think the remaining class would possibly in the evening. Right, I'll have to confirm though, but 2 classes per every day. How to use elimination in only 1 pair correct questions? Like I said, right, where you have only 1 option that you can know that 1 option is not correct, that means 1 by 3 is your chance of getting the question right. You should attempt these questions if you are a little too far from what you think is the cutoff. Then you should attempt those questions. If you are very close to what your expected cutoff is, then you cannot risk it. Then you should not be risking it. Essentially being that prelims is mostly going to be about elimination, and elimination is going to come from how much ever you have revised, and elimination is going to come from the amount of information that you have seen, the number of questions that you have seen. That means previous year's question papers for UPSC civil services. In addition, UPSC conducts other objective type examinations also, for example, the CDS, the EPFO, the CAPF exams. Please look at those question papers also, just to get a hang of what kind of questions UPSC asks you. Then you have many tests out in the market, right? You can always look at those tests and see the kind of questions that have been asked, because most serious aspirants are going to be attempting those tests. So they have come across those questions, if not twice, at least once for sure. So they have an advantage. You should also have that advantage. You should be competitive with these people, right? All right. So your class notes include board work or dictation or PDF or PPT. I'm going to be coming down to that also in a bit, right? Let me just try to tell you a bit about the examination first. Like I said, the most important skill for prelims examination is going to be elimination, and elimination is going to come with you or come to you with practice. It's a skill. You're not born with it. It's a skill that you develop with more and more practice. So it's not just about reading and understanding the class. It's not just about making your notes. It's also about revising your notes, making them even shorter so you can revise them even quickly. But the best way of revision will always be tests. So as many tests as you take, be a little competitive, try to analyze the outcomes of those tests also. Don't be worried about your marks. Only be worried about improvement. Only be trying to focus that you are going to be, let's say, if you scored an 80 today, you are going to be scoring more than 80 tomorrow. Focus on the trend line, not on the absolute scores. Now, in terms of the mains examination, in the mains examination, the skill that they test is answer writing. One thing about the mains examination that you should be absolutely clear about is that there is GS 1, 2, 3, 4. In addition, the marks for essay are going to be counted. In addition, your optional score is also going to be counted. Now, each of these is 250 marks. That means you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 papers. 5 into 250 is 1750. In addition, you will have, sorry, this is going to be 1250, not 1750. In addition, you have an optional. The optional is worth 500 marks. That means you have a combined total of 1750 marks. The score for prelims is not going to be added here. right? You are only going to be evaluated on the basis of these papers: GS1, 2, 3, 4, essay and optional. There is also a language paper. The marks for language paper do not get accounted for. There is a standard English paper and one Indian language that you only have to clear. The marks will not be added. The marks will only be added for GS, 4 of these GS subjects, one essay and one essay paper and one optional paper. Now, the most you would say common mistake that many aspirants will make is, since they look at the syllabus for general studies and the syllabus for general studies is going to be very, very vast, most of you are going to be investing almost 90% of your time here. While if you do a very preliminary assessment of the weightage and the distribution thereof, you will notice one thing, which is general studies 4, essay and optional combined, this plus optional, is going to be 1,000 marks. Remember this, GS4, essay, optional, 1,000 marks out of 1750. Now, optional is something which is rather not dependent on current affairs, which means, yes, if you have, let's say you have taken a humanities based optional, let's say a sociology or an anthropology for that matter, maybe the Indian economy for that matter, or some other subject, there may be a question which is based out of a theme that appeared in the current affairs. But current affairs is not where you prepare your optional subject from. If you're a good reader of newspapers, you will be able to add a few more examples and case studies to your answers, but that's not your standard source. In optionals, the source is absolutely clear, the syllabus is absolutely clear. You're going to be required at least a bachelor's level of understanding for every subject that you pick. In addition, the essay and the ethics part, this is also not reliant too much on current affairs. That means if you have read current affairs, great, you may have good arguments to also make in your essay as well as your ethics paper. But both the essay and the ethics paper, and if it's an optional, if it's a humanities based optional, they are fundamentally driven by the skill of answer writing. Now, essay is something that you can start preparing from today, or ethics is also something that you can, if you understand some principles in ethics, thereafter you start writing and you start preparing, you can start practicing ethics from today itself. You can start practicing the optional from today itself, provided that you are sure about your optional. These three things are essentially driven by the amount of practice that you do, not by the amount of sources that you have. So if you invest a decent amount of time here, rather than investing too much time reading GS1, 2 and 3 here, you will stand to benefit a little bit more. That means you have to be absolutely good at picking your optional, and you have to be sure that essay and ethics, if I am good at writing this essay and these ethics, are also going to fetch me a more than average marks. Then the remaining 3 subjects can be taken care of. In General Studies 1, you have broadly history. I will include art and culture as a part of history itself. You have broadly history, geography and Indian society. In General Studies 2, broadly what you have is polity and governance. In addition, you have international relations. General Studies 3 happens to be the most diverse of all. General Studies 3 will have the Indian economy, it will have science and tech, it will have environment and biodiversity, it will have internal security also. Broadly speaking, environment, biodiversity, disaster management, internal security, science and tech and Indian economy, all of them are a part of GS3. Now, when you analyze them very, very carefully, General Studies 1, some questions in mains from geography and Indian society can be sourced from newspapers. Although they may not appear directly from newspapers, sometimes it may be so. For example, unfortunately, one or the other country, let's say, witnessed something called glacial lake outbursts, or some country witnessed, let's say, a tsunami. So now that tsunami would have made it to news, and since your topic also covers important geophysical phenomenon, one phenomenon is tsunami, they may ask you a question on tsunami. They may ask you a question on how do we name cyclones. They may ask you questions from events, important geophysical phenomenon, from places in the news which have been mentioned in the news itself. Although, if you have to prepare for society or if you have to prepare for geography, newspapers are not what you pick up. You will first pick up your standard sources, understand these subjects, and then see what was the relevant news that appeared in the last 12 to 15 months. That gives you a high possibility of even imagining what questions may show up this year. In GS1, if you ask me, 80 marks are asked from Indian society, the remaining 120 from, so the remaining 170 from history and geography. Indian society is the part which has the most amount of connection to current affairs, and even geography for that matter. You can imagine that roughly 50% questions will be sourced from current affairs, not directly, but at least will have their theme which was mentioned in the current affairs. General Studies 2 and General Studies 3 is where you have the most amount of current affairs coming from. Remember, both of these papers are papers where they ask you questions on issues. They are going to ask you questions on what are the important issues as are happening in this particular polity, in this particular economy, or even internationally for that matter. It is an issue-based exam. It is not a fundamental concept-based exam. That means if you are asked 20 questions, maybe 1 or 2 of those questions will ask you something fundamental. For example, in economy, they have asked previously, what are the various methods of computation of GDP? But that question is also immediately linked with something which was there in the news. That means out of 20 questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions will be directly on concepts or on, you can say, standard reading. Almost 99% of the questions will be questions based out of issues. And issues are going to happen from this point onwards. Issues are something that you're going to cover from newspapers, from magazines. That means if you have a basic understanding of polity and how governance works, if you have a basic understanding of India's position with its neighbors and with the other superpowers in the world internationally, then from that understanding, you will try to look at what are the events as are happening in the next 12 to 15 months. And some of those events will be very important. Some of those events will become not as important. You will be expecting questions on those issues, those events. Similarly, in the case of GS3, right, the questions broadly will be on issues. The questions will not be on concepts. The questions will not be on phenomenon. Since these are issue-driven question papers, that means your biggest source, apart from your classroom understanding, will always and always be current affairs. Now, one thing to note here is that current affairs is directly linked to 500 marks for sure. You can add 100 more here. That means current affairs directly is going to affect 600 out of 1750 marks. But that means 1150 marks are not directly dependent on current affairs. What many aspirants do is that they make this mistake that they start going too deep into general studies 1, 2, 3, 4 and they'll forget about their optional subject. If you want to make it to the list, if you want to become an IAS officer as an unreserved category candidate, you have to be in the top 100. Even as a reserved category candidate, your name has to be there on the list. That means that you have to carefully look at the composition and allocate the limited amount of time you have given the weightage of these examinations. That means for you to clear the exam, let's say next year, if you want to be absolutely sure that next year I'm going to be making it, what should be a broader plan or what should be a study plan? I'm going to give you a very simple study plan that you can follow. You can also change depending upon your preference, but some things are going to be very, very important. We are starting in the month of, this is the month of May, right? I'm guessing. Yeah, this is the month of May 2025 till about May 2026. You have a period of 12 months. Now, what should be your broad plan if you want to clear it in the next year? I will tell you the broad plan would be. First, please decide what your optional subject is going to be. Please decide your optional subject. Firstly, as part of your optional subject, one thing that has to be made absolutely clear is it's not that whichever subject you graduated in or are graduating from, that has to be picked mandatorily. No. I can be an engineer. If I have a death wish, I can pick medicine also as my optional. They are not going to care whether I graduated in medicine or not. Right? It is entirely up to me which option should I choose. Many people get confused in the optional subjects. I will tell you a very simple trick. The trick is only twofold. One, do you like to read the subject? Are you, let's say, comfortable reading the subject? The second is the subject scoring or not? There are many subjects which you may like to read. There are many subjects you may be comfortable with. But those subjects, if they are not scoring, then you don't pick those subjects, as simple as it gets. You will first give priority to this part. Priority number one is whether the subject helps you score high or not. The second priority would be whether you are comfortable with that subject or not. That means, imagine I am going to appear next year. Since I have a background in engineering, I did electrical and electronics engineering from BITS Pilani. Since I did engineering, I have many optionals ready for me. For example, I may have an electrical engineering as an optional. I may pick natural sciences, physics, chemistry, maths. I can even pick humanities, right? Because I have an engineering background and I have done this engineering, for example, like from BITS Pilani, one of the most premier institutes in the country. So I can reasonably handle many of these subjects. Some person who has done, let's say, a history honors from Delhi University. Some person who has invested 3 years in history honors from Delhi University, quite obviously physics, chemistry, maths, electrical engineering, they just go out of the window for them. Right? This person can only focus on humanities. It'll be good if he is great at history, he can straight up pick history as his optional subject. But he has also anthropology, he has sociology, he has philosophy, he has psychology, he has English literature, he has many optionals to choose from. Now, given the amount of optionals that you can choose from, like I said, the first priority should be given to whether the subject is scoring or not. For example, this question I had to myself in 2015-16, I decided to appear again for this examination. And now I wanted to read English literature also. Now, this is something which I may like to read because, of course, there'll be poetry, there'll be prose and whatnot. But just because I like to read it does not mean I should be picking up this optional if this optional is not very highly scoring. So far in 2016, the analysis that I did was, I think, probably 2 to 3 candidates who took English literature as the optional, successful people. And the highest score that I found in 2016 was 261 or 263. While there were candidates who were taking anthropology, who were taking sociology, who were taking history, who were taking other humanities subjects, and they were scoring more than 280, they were scoring more than 290, sometimes even 330, sometimes even more than 300. That means if I decide a subject only on the basis of whether I like to read it or not, I may be at a disadvantage if the subject is not very scoring. So first, filter out which subjects you will absolutely not be taking. Then from the remaining subjects, pick out the subjects that you have a certain preference towards, that's something that you can read. Why I'm saying this is important is because in an exam where only 1,000 candidates are going to get selected from 5 lakhs, there is a high amount of possibility that you may have to read or you may have to write the subject again. Which is why it is important for you to pick a subject that you can read again also. So this is a very important thing, but not more important than whether the subject is scoring or not. For example, you boiled it down to, let's say, geography, anthropology, sociology, and let's say philosophy. From these 4 subjects that you may like to read, then find out which of these subjects are the most scoring subjects in the last 5 to 6 years. Whichever is the most scoring subject, ideally you should go for that particular subject. Normally what you do is you may have a litmus test where you can read one or the other topic for each of these subjects, as has been mentioned in the syllabus, whichever you feel the most comfortable reading, and if it's also scoring, please pick that particular optional. You should be absolutely certain about your optional right from, let's say, if you're starting in May, at least by the end of May, you should know what your optional is. Why? Because at the end of December of 2025, you should be optional ready. When I say optional ready, what does it mean? Optional ready means that I have covered the syllabus. That means I have read it, I have understood it. Secondly, I have made my notes. Thirdly, I have condensed these notes into short notes for multiple revisions. Plus, I have taken one test series. This you have to be done by December. Pick a subject, read that subject, understand that subject, right? Then make your notes, condense these notes into short notes so that you can read them very, very quickly. You can do multiple revisions. Most importantly, pick a test series also. Exceptionally, you can say, especially if you're picking humanities as an optional, because humanities may be easy to understand, but humanities mein articulation becomes a huge bit of a problem. That means you will have to be writing many answers just to be sure whether you are scoring better in comparison with other people or not. This you have to be ready by December. Why am I saying December? Is because from the January of next year till about May, your focus should be fundamentally on prelims. Why? Because since you are going to be appearing for the first time next year, you have to be absolutely certain as to what to expect from the prelims examination. It's an objective type exam. UPSC's questions are slight bit or on the grey side of things. They don't ask you questions which are clearly black and white. So you have to be very, very comfortable with the kind of exam that is. Right? From Jan to May, focus more on prelims. Right? Leave your optional apart. You can probably test yourself once a month for optional. Otherwise, you can skip it here itself. In the month of May, when the prelims happens, from May, you will get around 3 months till your main examination. That means June, July, August, you will say ending September is when you will have your mains examination. In these 3 months time, you cannot pick an optional, you cannot become really good at an optional, which is why you have to do this hard work initially itself. So you have 3 months time where you can only focus on writing and testing yourself. In these 3 months, you only should be picking up on some subjects or some topics which are there in the main syllabus, but not there in the prelim syllabus. For example, in prelims, there is no need for essay. In prelims, there is no such scope for an ethics as an optional or ethics as a subject. In prelims, they don't ask you questions on Indian society. In prelims, they don't ask you questions on internal security. In prelims, they don't ask you questions on on international relations. They may ask you one or the other organization or the place in the news, but they don't ask you international relations per se. So there are many topics which are a part of mains, not a part of prelims. Those topics only you can pick in these 3 months. Except for that, your core subjects, which is history, geography, polity, and economy. In addition, some aspects of S&T, science and tech, and environment and biodiversity, you would have covered sufficiently for your prelims examination. So on those topics, you only have to write answers. In these 3 months time, you should focus more on mains answer writing and taking as many tests as you possibly can, picking up only and only those subjects as those topics which were not there as a part of prelims. That means from here onwards till about the end of December, you will have to do 2 things for sure. One, you have to be done with your optional. Second, you have to be done with the 4 core aspects of prelims examination, which is economy, history, polity, and geography. These 4 core subjects for your prelims, you have to be absolutely acing these subjects given your competition. So from here till about December, you have your course charted out clearly. You will have to focus on ancient, medieval, modern history, art and culture. You have to focus on getting your concepts right in economics and then applying it to the Indian economy. You will have to get your basic understanding of polity, constitution, governance, and as to how those things function. And you will have to have a decent understanding of geography. If your 4 core optionals, if your 4 core areas are very well covered, thereafter from January till about May, you can focus specifically on previous current affairs and the current affairs which are going to come. And along the same time, you can be taking many tests. The more tests you take, the better your strategy becomes in terms of attempting that particular exam, and then eventually it's a matter of luck whether you clear it or not. But this should be a broader strategy. From this point onwards, from May till about December, you will have roughly around 7 months complete. In 7 months' time, you have 2 tasks at hand, 4 core subjects, and 1 optional paper has to be made absolutely ready if you are appearing for the next year. Now, in these 4 core months, we can also have a weekly plan. In 1 week, what do? Normally, what do I say? Let's say you have 7 months, and in 7 months, you have 4 core subjects: history, economy, polity, geography. That means you have roughly around 2 months for each. Let's make it 8. If you have 8 months, 4 core subjects, that means you have 2 months for history, 2 months for economics, 2 for polity, and 2 for geography. Now in history, you can dedicate it to ancient, medieval, modern, and art and culture. In economics, this can be between macroeconomics plus Indian economy. In polity, you'll have to study polity plus constitution plus some aspects governance. In geography, you will have physical geography, you will have human geography. Now in 7 months time, you have 2 months per paper. Don't try to club all the subjects in a single day. Tell yourself that in the next 2 months time, for example, if you're enrolled for Titan, that means in the next 1.5, 2 months, we will be covering 2 subjects for sure, right? Indian economy plus one other subject. Right now, you can focus on covering Indian economy and the other subject. So you can align your preparation, your strategy alongside your classes. That means if in the next 2 months, I'm going to be picking up, let's say, on economics and polity, then I have 2 months exactly for them. What do? In these 2 months time, I can dedicate 1 month, I can divide it into 15 days each. 15 days exclusively for polity, 15 days exclusively for economy. That means you may say that 2 weeks for polity and 2 weeks for economy. Every month, dedicate 2 weeks for one particular subject, dedicate 2 weeks for another particular subject from GS. In addition, also do your optional subject. That means every week, if there are 7 days, in 7 days time, depending upon, let's say you have week 1, week 2, week 3 and week 4. Week 1, let's say, is for economy, week 2 is for economy, week 3 is for polity, and week 4 is for polity. That means in week 1, on every day, what you can do is out of these 7 days, you can have a 4+3 situation, where 4 days you dedicate specifically to general studies and 3 days you dedicate exclusively for optional. Or you may do, what you may do is in a single day, you may dedicate some amount of time to your optional and some amount of time to your general studies papers. This is exactly how you should be preparing. You have to have a broad plan. That means by the end of the next 2 months, how many subjects should I be covering? Don't try to fill your plate with too much. Try to keep it reasonable, try to keep it very sustainable, something that you can do and repeat also. For example, if your end goal is by the end of this year, I have to have bulked up. You don't go to the gym and from the first day, you don't start lifting 50 kg straight up. That's not what you do. You begin slow. You begin with a 2.5 kg dumbbell. From 2.5, you build enough habits. Then you start lifting 5, from 5 to 7.5, from 7.5 to 10, 10 to 12.5, then 15, then 20. You gradually raise that weight. If you start pushing beyond your weight from the day first itself, that means in a week's time, you will not be going to the gym once again. That is a mistake that you have to avoid. You should always have a foresight that at the end of this month, what should I be covering? Because I have 2 months for polity, 2 months for economy. That means in the next 4 months, I definitely have to cover these for sure. Now, I can be somebody who's exceptionally fast. I can cover them up very, you can say, quickly. I can cover them in reasonable amount of time. But in the next 1 month, I should have covered, let's say, 1/4 of economy, 1/4 of polity. That's my target. So I'll be attending classes. I'll be looking at the reference, standard reference. Then I'll be tallying these classes with previous year's question papers. I'll be attempting those. Then I will also be attempting tests, as every day I'm going to be getting some few questions. That is your standard practice. Every day, please have one general studies subject plus one optional. Or you may have 4 days exclusively for general studies and 3 days exclusively for your optional. Don't forget your optional, please. Because if you look at all these candidates who have gotten selected in the top 100, look at their scores in the optionals, you will rarely find any person, very, very few people who have scored less than 250 in their optionals. Most of them will be cases of 260 and above, and dare I say 280 and above. And for you to get a 280 and above in optionals, it will require a lot of effort. The good thing about optionals is that the return on investment is higher. That means the more you study an optional, the more you repeat. Typically, you tend to become better at it. You will tend to write better answers, and usually that will lead to an addition to your score. That is not the case with general studies. Every year, general studies will be different because every year new issues are going to crop up. So invest your time very, very wisely. Previous year's question papers you should look at. You should look at the notification. You should look at the syllabus. You should look at the kind of questions that have been asked. and prepare a broader strategy for yourself. Like I said, have some bit of a larger plan. The larger plan is by the end of December this year, my optional would be ready, plus my 4 core subjects from general studies would be done and dusted. That means from standard sources, if you ask me any questions on these subjects, I will not get them wrong. I will not get them wrong more than 8 out of 10 times. Right? I will always get them right more than 8 out of 10 times. That is the amount of effort that I'm going to put in. Now, from me to reach that particular stage, I will have to have a quarterly plan. I will have to have a monthly plan. From a monthly plan, I will have a weekly plan. And from a weekly plan, I will have a daily plan. Now, the easiest part is to plan. The easiest part is when I'm telling you, oh, this is how you should go about it. The most difficult part is sticking to the plan. Now, sticking to the plan requires motivation. It requires discipline. The only thing it requires is, if you ask me, not motivation, because you are motivated enough to tell yourself that I'm going to be writing this exam. The only one thing which it is going to take forward, which is going to take you forward going from here, is discipline. Mind you that this whole process is very, very boring. I can guarantee you it's very, very boring. Only if you're attempting for the first time. Many of these subjects you're going to be coming about for the first time, so you'll be excited. This energy, this excitement lasts you one attempt. Maybe you can carry it over to the second attempt, but by the third or the fourth attempt, this energy, this excitement is gone, because you are going to be reading the same stuff over and over again. So most of these candidates who get selected are people who have seen themselves through this boredom, who have been very, very disciplined through these years, and that is how they got to be a part of that particular PDF. There will hardly be any person, hardly be any aspirant who will not be hardworking. If 900 candidates get selected, mind you, 890 of those will be very, very hardworking people. So that is a trait that you should also develop. This exam is not for the intelligent. This exam is for the people who are perseverant, who are disciplined, who make a strategy, and who are disciplined enough to follow that strategy. And they continue to do this hard work year and year after, daily basis pay, on a very, very daily basis, eventually till they succeed. Because if you follow this, you may not be lucky that you may not get in the first time, but you will definitely get in the second time. If not the second, but the third. If you persevere enough, you are definitely going to be making it, provided that you have a strategy, you have a plan, and you follow that plan, which is more important. This is what I wanted to tell you about this examination. So prelims, primarily about the skill of elimination. And when I say skill, skill is something which is acquired, not what you are born with. So you have to put yourself to practice. You have to put yourself in difficult situations, situations that you don't enjoy particularly, because from those situations, from those questions that you get wrong, you are going to learn a few things. Apply that learning, become better, try to become better at elimination. You will automatically discover that prelims you will not be scared of. Mains is a completely different beast altogether. Mains, with the questions they're going to be asking you are issue-based topics or issue-based questions. That means many questions will be coming from current affairs. So current affairs you just cannot avoid, but it is not going to be checking your understanding of the current affairs. It's going to be checking your answers. That means, can you understand the question? Do you have relevant content? Can you structure the relevant content in the amount of time? 7 minutes for a 10 marker, 11 minutes for a 15 marker. If you can do that, then how many questions you attempt? And basis that, you're going to get selected or not. Completely a different skill compared to prelims. Both these exams, although the syllabus is broadly the same, but the approach is fundamentally different. So from here till about mains, don't focus too much on prelims or mains. Focus on getting a basic understanding of the core subjects, of your optional also. Focus on applying that understanding. Become a little more targeted January onwards. First pick up prelims, become very, very targeted towards prelims. Once the prelims is taken care of, thereafter you'll have 3.5, 4 odd months for you to simply dedicate yourself to the preparation for mains examination. That is what your broader strategy could be. Now, depending upon how much time you have, whether you're still in college or not, whether you're working somewhere, depending on the amount of time that you have, you can tweak, you can twist and turn any of these strategies. You can make your own tactics. That is entirely up to you. One mistake that you should avoid is trying to talk to 100 different people, because 100 different people are going to give you 100 different opinions, and that is only going to confuse you any further. So you pick a person who you can rely on, pick a person who's reliable, whose advice normally works for you. Get that advice, try to apply that advice, find out if it actually works for you or not. Only if the advice does not work for you, then speak to another person. Don't try to talk to a set of 100 people and get confused, right? Find a person who you can trust. Now, there are many people who are asking me many questions. That Anshika is asking me, can I totally depend upon PW teachers and resources? Anshika, I would be lying if I say that the only thing you have to rely on is PW's teachers and the PW resources. Because like I said, mains examination is not a static examination. It is an exam where they're going to be asking you questions based on issues. And if that is the case, if you are going to be having questions based on issues, no person will have the foresight to tell you what is going to happen in the next 1 year. I can't tell you what is going to happen to the Indian economy in the next 1 year. So my resources are covered for what has happened so far. But that understanding is going to be fundamental for you to understand the issues which are going to happen here onwards. That means, for example, headline inflation tomorrow has, you can say, overshot a certain target. Do you even know what inflation means? Do you even know what headline inflation means to be able to make sense of that news event that you're reading now? So the first part will be taken care of in the foundation course. The foundation course is going to set for you a very, very solid foundation. And on that foundation, please try to look up different current affairs. Try to imagine the kind of questions that they may be asking you. So if you ask me, is your success only dependent on me or on your teacher and the resources that you're given? I would say 60-40. 60% yes, 40% it will be your effort in terms of scanning current affairs, imagining questions and adapting those. How many classes are we going to have? I have, so Tanush, in economics, you're going to be having 6 weeks of economics topics. That means roughly around 40 odd classes. It may be a +5 at best, not more than that. I can tell you only about economics since I don't know about other subjects. Timeline for PYQs to be referred. Good question, Siddharth. Don't go beyond 2013. 2013 to 2025. 25 is going to happen this year. So when you get the question paper, so this is good enough. Because 2013 is when they changed the pattern. You don't have to go beyond 2013. So for civil services previous year's question papers, 2013 to 2025, not beyond that. I think it's a decent amount of questions. Is there anything else that you need to know? I'm a law student. What option should I choose? Sanika, I am not in the best space to tell you what option you should be choosing. What I can tell you for sure is that law is a very, very scoring subject. Law is a scoring subject. I mean, I think the option with the highest selection ratio is also law for that matter. Very few people write with law as an optional, but law for civil services is very different from law for other judicial exams. So, I mean, law could be your option. You can pick up a sociology, you can pick up an anthropology, depending upon comparing that syllabus, trying to see if you're good at not, and try to get in touch with a person who can actually tell you some bit about law as an optional. What I know for a fact is a couple of my friends got selected with law as an optional, very, very scoring optional, but the requirements in civil services is very different from judicial exams. Since I'm not a lawyer, I will not be able to tell you, honestly. I'm afraid of Hindi paper for regional language. Tulika, you can pick any other regional language too, but Hindi paper, mind you, it was also a concern for me. I used to think I'm not very, very good at Hindi paper. But there is a book which is called Samanya Adhyan. I read it one night before my mains examination and I was able to score 185 the next day. The only thing you have to be taking care of is don't try to go overboard. Like try to write simple Hindi. Try to only make sure that you're not making any mistakes, grammatical mistakes or spelling mistakes. You will be through, not a problem. Optional is only in mains, right? Yes, absolutely. Optional is only for mains. Sir, which batch for 2027? Dayanand, I think the batch for 2027 is called Pinnacle. So Titan is for the next year. Pinnacle is for 2 years from now. Pinnacle is for 2027. Anybody else who may want to ask me questions? What about PSI as an optional? So Shubhi, in my experience, which has been roughly around, I mean, teaching experience is not as much as the experience in the industry, but in my 8 years of experience in this industry, PSIR I have found to be one of the safest options when it comes to humanities. Very, very scoring. Many people can be picking up. I am an economics student. Is economics going to be a scoring optional? Yes, Vivekanand. Economics is a very, very scoring optional. But you will have to GS economics and economics as an optional, very, very different things, right? So if you are an economics student, you can also pick economics as an optional, provided you are good with both the macro and the micro aspects and as well as the Indian economy. See, what I can see here is many people amongst you are asking me what option you should be choosing. That's not something that I can decide for you. What I can tell you is, one, you don't have to pick the same option, the option that you have graduated from. If you are not very comfortable in your subject of graduation, you can pick any other option. Second, whenever you pick your options, there will be some options that you clearly know that you will not be able to take. For example, many people will not be able to take a maths, physics, chemistry, medicine, biology, because they are non-science backgrounds. So they go for the most commonly taken options in the humanities aspect. When you are selecting through those, try to look at the scoring subjects and then look at also what is the subject matter that will be comfortable reading time and again, more and more times. PubAd is also very, very, Pinnacle is in English, Pinnacle is not in Hindi. What about standard books for economics? Like, okay. Guys, like I said, in economics, specifically for general studies, standard books are going to help you as a reference. That means if you think, oh, I'm going to cover this book from page 1 to the last page and I'm going to be prepared for civil services, that's not going to happen. Because like I said, many questions in mains, 9 out of 10 questions will be questions from issues as are happening. No person has the foresight of predicting what is going to happen in the next 1 year and write a book about it. Many of these books have taken help from what has been asked previously, which is why they keep going bulkier and you can say bulkier day by day. So if that is your standard trope, no. A good way would be for you to pick a book which is the most, you can say, most commonly read. From this book, only cover those topics which were not, in your opinion, dealt very well in the class itself, or some topics where you are not very comfortable, right, given whatever you have studied. It's a reference book. That means you don't have to read them cover to cover, only for topics where you don't feel very confident. Okay, so how I'm going to also tell you how this batch is going to work. So tomorrow onwards, we will have our academic classes beginning. We'll begin with Indian economy. And what will happen is, in the Indian economy section, there'll be 2.5 hours worth of a class. After the class, you're going to get your own notes. So that means there will be class. In addition, post the class, you will be given a PDF format of your notes also. So you can concentrate only on understanding in the class itself. And if you're comfortable making your own notes, you can do that too. But I will have you, you can say, consider a rider here. Please do not only try to write what is being written on the board. Try to focus, because notes you're automatically going to get. Try to focus on what is being taught in the board. Try to understand that topic. Notes you will get automatically at the end of every class in the form of a PDF. So you can always print this PDF out and eventually get a compilation. Or if you want to, I don't think it will be good for you to note it down in a singular book. I mean, depending upon whatever you prefer. So class notes, in addition, at the end of each class, you're going to be getting a daily mains practice question. That means one practice question for mains every day after every class, plus 3 to 4 objective type questions after every class. In addition to the classroom support, you also have the mentorship support. That means not only will you have me as your teacher, as your faculty, you will automatically also be a part of a mentorship group where there are very, very able mentors, people who have written this exam previously and many times very successfully also. These people will also be guiding you towards your goals. So you have two types of supports, your classroom support and your mentorship support. If you have also taken what is called Select 360, in Select 360, you will have something called UPSC Khazana. Now, what is this UPSC Khazana? If you feel that you are already too late or you want to prepare, let's say, history also alongside economics, in UPSC Khazana, you will find lectures of previous, you can say, faculties or previous lectures for all subjects in the recorded format. These are not going to be live. These are recorded lectures, previous lectures that you can always visit if you want to prepare ahead of the class also. So UPSC Khazana you get. If you have taken Select 360, you also get your practice question evaluated. right? You will get, you can say, your Srijan Mains program also directly. There are many benefits of Select 360 also, right? But the standard thing you are going to be expecting after every day is, one, you will have a classroom. In the classroom, please try to focus on understanding the topics. You will get your notes. If you want to make your own notes, great for you. If you don't, that's okay, completely all right. One daily mains practice question, one, and roughly around 3 to 4 objective type question papers. This is what you'll get. Where will we get the DMP? On your portal itself, on the app itself. See ya. CSAT, yes, Rajkumar has been asking me about CSAT for a very long while now. CSAT is going to happen. If you have taken Titan, we are going to conduct CSAT for you also towards the end itself. That means closer to your prelims examination, towards the end, we will also cover CSAT for you guys. So you don't have to worry. All of the material, Sia, you're going to get on the app itself. If you come down to the app, you will find that there is some category. In this category, you will find class notes. You will find them there. How much syllabus should be covered before attempting mock tests and PYQs? Just a moment. My mouth has run dry a little bit. How many questions should be attended mock tests and PYQs? So what I can tell you is, normally speaking, for mains particularly, you will have to wait a little bit. For prelims, however, every day you cover a certain topic, you should be able to attempt previous year's question papers. So the standard rule you can follow, and this may change for different subjects, is once 1/3 of every subject is covered, right, thereafter you can focus on mains writing and you can focus on prelims starting from day 1. For every topic discussed in the class, you can always look up previous year's question papers. What I normally try to do is, in my classes, I will have an inculcated part where I will discuss from this particular topic, UPSC has asked previously this type of question. So we will discuss that in the class itself, right? Sometimes we may not be able to, but you can always do that on your own as well, not a problem. We don't get to choose any option for prelims. No, Devarshi, you don't have to appear for prelims, for an option in your prelims examination, certainly not. ਉਹ ਭਾਜੀ ਉੱਥੇ 11 ਕਲਾਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਨਾ ਛੱਡ ਦਿਓ। ਉਹ ਨਾ ਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਈ 11 ਕਲਾਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਛੱਡਣੀ ਹੈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਨਾ ਲਓ। ਅੱਛਾ, any other question? And the medium for Titan and Pinnacle is going to be completely English. That means you have to have, like, this is, the medium will not be Hindi at any cost. If you want to appear for English or Hindi, there are other, you can say, options too. Current affairs, Diksha, every week we have a weekly current affairs class also. So you don't have to worry about current affairs too. But if you ask me, my personal opinion for you would be, or my personal recommendation would be, to read a newspaper on a daily basis. Sir, is anthropology scoring? Shrikar is saying, I don't have any information on anthropology, but I've heard that it is very scoring. If we see at a recorded class, how will doubts be cleared? Devarshi, I guess every person, every faculty will have this. They will have their own Telegram channel. For example, this is my Telegram channel. If you can scan this particular code, you can get onto the group. Once you join the group, I'm guessing you will be able to pass on your doubts to me if you have any doubts per se. Right? The doubts, of course, have to be relevant. So you can join these channels. I'm sure every faculty is going to have their own medium of communication with you too. I'm guessing this is the most preferred one, Telegram, where if there are some doubts, I can club many doubts and I can address them all together one by one. Or we can also establish a channel wherein you can always email me, you can always write to me. Right? You can also meet me personally if you happen to be in Delhi, but I'm guessing most of you will not be. But that's all right. Anji, any other question? Thank you for sharing up your knowledge. Shashank, it'll be better, I'll be happier if you apply what you have discovered so far. There's a lot of disinformation about this particular exam, lots of misinformation in the market. Please try to keep your preparation very simple. Like I said, the course has to be in the next 9 months, one optional 4 core subjects prelims, right, for your general studies. From January to May, focus specifically on prelims. From May to whenever mains happens, focus on answer writing more specifically in a very targeted manner. Be option ready by the end of December. right? This is your broader plan. You can always have your own. But please don't go in without an optional. Please don't do that. Which newspaper to follow? Diksha, I've already mentioned previously. There are two that you can take. The Indian Express and the Hindu. If you ask me my preference, I will say the Hindu. But many kids have a problem understanding the Hindu because of the language. So they can always pick the Indian Express too, right? So you don't have to worry there. Anything else? Ethics. Ethics. So, okay, so Samba is telling me I've joined Telegram group, but group chat is only for the admin. Of course, it's only for the admin. What you can do is, right, let me see and get in touch with the people, and I will ask them if there is a channel that I can establish wherein you can send me your doubts. I can club many doubts who are like which are very similar to each other, and then I will have those doubts addressed on the Telegram group per se, right? On the Telegram group, what I normally do is I also share some handouts sometimes. I also share, you can say something, some good reading that I've seen that you should also be reading. Ethics. Sanika, what are you asking me about ethics? The question is ethics question mark. Like, what about ethics? Ethics will be covered as a part of your course. Can we prepare mathematics as an option along with GS for the next attempt? Amit, it's going to be a little bit on the more difficult side. If you have maths as a background and if you're comfortable with maths, it's going to take 6 to 9 months for you to cover maths. That means some part of trade-off will happen when it comes to general studies, but maths is a very, very scoring optional. And each year, the ROI on maths is only going to improve. It's going to be a measured decision. Like, I mean, I cannot say unless I know about your background, unless I know how comfortable you are with maths as an option. So it is going to take 6 to 9 months of dedicated preparation for maths or for any natural sciences for that matter. Can we get the link somewhere? Can't scan the QR. I mean, you can scan the QR. Is it not visible? Or you can just look up Ranchan Kaul, RANCHAN KAUL SIR PW OnlyIAS. You can look it up, you can join it. Is optional subject available in English language? Kannan, I'm guessing yes. Some of these options will be available in the English language also. Guidance for newspaper reading. Abhishek, I think today's session, I cannot really, I can tell you many details about newspaper reading, but I think as we go along in the course, it'll be better. Right? As I take you along the course, I'll tell you what to read, what to skip, right? Things that should be read, things that should be, you can say, that should be skipped. How to access mentorship. Devarshi, you will be led to the mentor group automatically. The admin team is going to, of course, like classify you into different mentors. So you don't have to worry about that on your own. We'll take care of that. Which subject is going to go with economics on batch? Hasanveer, no idea about that part, but I'm sure like they will announce it very soon. Sanika, most of you are asking me questions which is about, like the admin part of the questions, which I will not have a lot of clue on. If you want to ask me questions around the exam or what it takes, or if you have any common doubts, right, you can ask me, I can address those. Where can I get technical support for the app now? Rajat, I don't know, like I'm sure there would be a help section, but of course we are keeping a track of all the comments that are being made and some messaging will be done to you, right? You don't have to worry too much. We will take an account of all these common doubts and we'll get in touch. Okay. So I have maths background, have covered most of the syllabus in college in 7 mathematics. Then Amit, then you can consider maths for sure. You can. Because if you ask me, a person who can do natural sciences should do natural sciences. Yeah. You guys don't have to ask me like really personal questions, please. I mean, that is something that I will not be able to address. I'm so sorry. Engineering services preparation sufficient for mechanical engineering optional. I know Vinayak now. I have a batchmate of mine who was rank 1 in engineering services examination from mechanical itself. I don't think he was very comfortable taking mechanical as an option in civil services, but then he did take it and he did score very well also. Didn't make it to civil services, but yes, for sure. I mean, I remember for a fact, took mechanical engineering as an optional. Sir, tell something about yourself. What do you want to know about me, guys? Okay, so my name is Ranchan Kaul. I happen to be a Kashmiri. I was born and raised in Jammu and Kashmir. For my early schooling happened there itself. Then I moved to BITS Pilani. BITS Pilani is where I graduated from electrical and electronics engineering. I was working initially for about 15 months. Then I decided to take 2 attempts. Then I went back to work again. And ever since, I have been working for many MNCs that you may or may not know about, but a bunch of startups also. And I've been in this industry for about 8 years now. That's mostly what my experience has been. Should we read Economic Times along with the Hindu Sanika? I would say no, because you don't have the time to cover so many things in a day. Right? That's what I'm saying. The most common mistake you're going to be making is spreading yourself too thin. If you try to read everything, then that means you will not be able to make notes, you will not be able to revise them, you will not be able to remember them after 3 days' time. So if that's the case, why pick extra things? Should we make notes from NCRTs or not? Payal, you normally will not have to. If you're attempting the classes, if you're attending these classes too, you will automatically cover those NCRTs. So you don't have to worry too much. But I would recommend that before you start any class, like let's say we're going to be coming up for economics tomorrow, right? You should definitely be reading something or the other, like pick an NCRT macroeconomics and start reading those chapters. It's not a very hard book to understand. How to ask doubts in the live class since the live chat gets lagging. Now, Abhishek, there is some latency for sure. If you ask me doubts, exactly how you have asked right now, right? The moment you type your doubt, you have to wait for 25 to 30 seconds, right, before I get it. And when I respond, of course, there will be that lag too. But what I would recommend is in my class, when we are going to be joining the class tomorrow, I'm going to be telling you the rules of the class per se. So you focus on those rules, which is where I'm going to be coming in. I'm going to be telling you about the topic. I'm going to be explaining you the entirety of the topic, and then I will give you some time to ask you your doubts. So don't start writing your doubts as I'm teaching. I will wait and I will give you the option to ask me your doubt every time a subtopic or a topic ends. So you can wait for those doubts, because that's when you will have my most attention. Normally, this feels like a YouTube comment section, and because it's a live stream, for me, it's very hard to keep up with the comments that have been asked, that show up here. So what I will do is, there will be a dedicated time after every subtopic where I will ask you what your common doubts are. I will try to solve them also. All right. Me also electrical background, but it's very difficult to take electrical as an option. Yes, Samba, I know, of course, for a fact, it's a very difficult subject. Batch books are enough for preparation. Vishwa, I can tell you for a fact, and I told you, I don't want to lie. No. Batch books are enough for you to build a very strong foundation. You have to add more and more current affairs to it. You have to add some more sources to it, but of course, limited sources, which every teacher, as they teach you, they're going to be telling you what to refer to and what not to, right? I have told something about myself also. Now you don't have to worry too much. So tomorrow's class timings, Diksha, I can tell you for my class, it will begin at 11 in the morning. It will end at 1:30 if everything goes right. How to clarify doubts if you are viewing a recorded class? Devarshi, I just told you the same thing. Every topic we cover, every subtopic we cover, focus on the board, try to understand what has been said, right? If you don't understand it, wait, because after the topic, I'm going to be giving you the time to ask me questions. Okay, so you don't have to worry that. Here itself in the portal. Alrighty. Are DDPs and PYQs enough for question practice, or we have to do it from other things also? You, of course, have to do it from other things also. See, I can tell you one thing for sure, and let's end this discussion there and then itself. 5 lakh candidates, only 1,000 are going to get selected, right? The ratio is such that you have to be, for every 1,000 candidates who attempt this exam, only 1 gets selected. So if you think life is going to be very easy for you, that these are your set of books and you have to only read and revise them and you're going to be through, then you are keeping yourself under a delusion. What I can tell you for fact is, these books are essential for you to form a basic understanding and a basic framework for a subject. Thereafter, you have to refer to current affairs, you have to refer to some miscellaneous sources as the teacher will tell you in the class for every topic. But focus mostly on asking the teacher how much to read, what depth to read. More important would be to apply those. Like take tests for, you can say, as many as you possibly can. That is going to help you see you through. Anything else, guys? Which batch? Okay, okay. Is there somebody else? Are DDPs and PYQs enough? DDPs and PYQs are enough to keep you in practice. Are they enough to help you clear the exam? No. Along with your class notes, should we study respective chapter from NCERT parallelly? Abhishek, I would request you to read the chapter first before coming to the class. That way, you also revise. And when you're reading the chapter on your own, you will find that there will be some areas where you will get stuck or some concept where you get stuck. So you can always ask me the same doubt in the class itself. Rather than me coming to the class, telling you or giving you a sermon and then you reading the same chapter from NCERTs. Right? Better would be you prepare from NCERTs first for every class. I'll tell you the topic in advance. You can pick it up from the book. You can read it on your own. Come back to the class the next day. You will also revise it. You will also clarify your doubts. Some resources you could tell. See, I have given you the resources for Indian economy. You will have every subject, every teacher, every faculty is going to come. They're going to tell you respective sources for each of their you can say subjects. So you don't have to rely on me completely. Economics I told you already, right? If you could see it. These are your sources for economics. These are your standard sources. That means you cannot avoid them. In over and above, that's not your concern. About short note making, Suma, as we discuss in the class, I will also show you my notes. I will also show you things like how do we condense all of this information. Sir, tomorrow's topic, Diksha, tomorrow's topic would be circular flow of income. We will begin with national income accounting. Devarshi, I know if you have watched a recorded class and then you have a doubt, how do you ask me? Like I said, I will get in touch with them because it's also like I've also joined very recently. I'll ask them if you're allowed to email it to me. Once many students email me the particular doubt, what I can do is I can club them if the doubts are very similar and I can address them and post it on my Telegram group. All right. If there is any other medium of communication with you guys, right, you can of course always ask your mentors, but if there's any more medium of communication that I may establish with you people, I will let you know as the class happen. Please tell tomorrow's topic so that we study in advance. We will begin with national income accounting. National income accounting is chapter 1 in your macroeconomics. So tomorrow's class will be more introductory, right? You should definitely pick up on national income accounting, NCERT itself. Any other thing that you guys are a little worried about? Zunaid, the answer is yes. NCERT class 12 macro. Yes, Varsha. NCERT class 12 macro. If you can find an older version, great. If you can find the newer version, not a problem. First chapter. Sir, हमें भूल गए. यशवीर, मैं तुम्हें नहीं भूला. I've forgotten nobody. Anyone else? Any doubts? Right. Okay, so Dada, I don't know. See, most of you are asking me, you're sending me the name of an author or the name of a book, and you're asking me whether this is good enough or not. I can vouch for a fact I've read none of these, so I have no opinion on whether these books are good or not. I have done it from a very, very standard source, right? So what you can follow is whatever book you found is the most commonly read book or the most popular book, please pick it and start reading from those books also. But like I said, every reference book has to be treated like a reference book. You don't read it cover to cover. That's not going to help you anywhere. You can refer to those books when you have some topics where you don't find yourself to be in the most comfortable position or where you felt that I as a teacher did not do enough justice. You can first get in touch with me. I can try to elaborate more. But if you still find that there is something that is missing, then you refer to those reference books only for those selected topics. Don't do it like cover to cover. I'm going to appear in 2025 UPSC, but I'm not that confident. How should I manage both? I mean, what else do you have to manage, Muskan? Muskan, one thing I can tell you is even if it's your 6th attempt and you have prepared the hardest, you will still never be 100% confident before the exam. So it's not you. Every aspirant goes through it. Every serious aspirant definitely goes through it, because if you're not serious, you don't care. If you are serious, you will have that anxiety, you will have those butterflies. But trust me, which is why tests and revision come in very, very handy. The more tests you take, you have seen many types of questions, you have seen bad scores, you have seen good scores. So that gives you enough confidence to appear for the exam itself. Right? So the confidence is only going to come from practice. You don't have to worry. I'm in last semester of graduation. In next year, I'm able to give next year's paper or not. Now, Hassanveer, like I said, there are two things. Even if you're graduating, it doesn't matter. Before your final selection, if you have graduated, good enough. The only thing is you have to be 21 by the time you appear for the exam. That is the one thing that you'll have to be concerned with. Right? Even if you're graduating next year, it doesn't matter. So I'm burdened with multiple exams like CDF, CAPF, and ABAT, and I don't want to rely solely on one exam. Now, Junaid, you will have to do the remaining on your own. But like I said, the principle is if you confuse yourself too much, if you give yourself too many options, then you end up not becoming better at even one of those. So maybe have one serious goal and one alternate goal. You cannot have 20 different goals and one serious goal. Then that's going to be very confusing for you. So can you give us an overview on scoring optional subjects so that it becomes easier to choose? As we go along the way, as we go along the classes, I'll tell you some subjects, I'll tell you something about the mistakes that I made. For example, in some subjects, what was required and what did I think? Right? I can tell you most of those, but as we go along the classes. So when I studied micro in 12th, standard NCRTs were not a choice of books. Arnav, I know why they were not a choice of books, but school preparation and preparation for UPSC is very, very different. In UPSC, you will have to, like, I will help you imagine and visualize these things so that you get a question, any question, you can at least be able to answer those. The video is buffering continuously, not into my hand. Anybody else who has a doubt? All of you all, can you tell me a little bit about your backgrounds? Like how many of you are engineers? Those of you who are engineers can just send a hi. The remaining can wait. All engineers can send me a hi, so I have a decent understanding of what the class composition is like. Engineers, send in a hi. One. There must be people who are ashamed of being an engineer. I mean, you don't have to worry too much. Hi. There's a bunch of you. Okay. All right, perfect. Many of you all. Fair enough. Fair. Absolutely. Great numbers. Okay, so the engineers can wait. Now all, let's say, lawyers and doctors. If you're a lawyer or a doctor, send a hi. And if you are a lawyer or a doctor, you can just send an L or a D so that I know. All those engineers can send a high E, lawyers can send a high L, doctors can send a high D, right? All other people can send me whatever, like humanities send a high H, so I know. Lawyer, nice. Whoever is lawyer. Dr. Nagaraj, I could see you. I mean, you don't even have to mention it, of course. It's a great class composition. Very good class composition. Like, I mean, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have students from humanities. We have a fair class composition. That means my task is going to be much more easier, right, with you all. What I will request you is that tomorrow when we begin the class, right, please be attentive, please attend. We will establish the rules of the class also, right? We will establish how you can say get the max out of this particular class, right? But that will happen tomorrow, right? Great. Fair bunch of you all. It was very good for a session to begin with, right? We are slowly getting to be a little more comfortable with each other, right? What we can do is here onwards, we're going to be taking our journey forward, right? So what we can focus on is only and only the classes. Thereafter, we'll see how it goes. Oh, certainly I can. Dilpreet, I can definitely guide people who are also from medical backgrounds because I happen to be a PCMB. So, Zunaid, the answer is 4. Okay. Perfect. BCom, mechanical. Okay, fair bunch of you all. It's a good thing. It was good for a first session. Tomorrow onwards, we begin with our first class. The first topic that we'll have to cover is national income accounting. Previous to that, I'll give you some basic understanding on what economics means, what economy means, what is macro, micro, right? But you can start from reading the first chapter in your NCERT macro, class 12th, fundamentals of macroeconomics. First chapter is national income accounting. Please start to read, right? All right then. Till that point in time, I think it was a great session, right? Let's begin tomorrow itself. Alrighty. See you all. It's fun. Bye-bye.